The night the fortress trembled, Lulu was not afraid of the noise. She was afraid of being noticed. Warriors thundered past her where she knelt on the stone floor, scrubbing blood from the cracks. Their shadows cut through the torchlight like blades, but none of them looked down. No one ever looked down. Omegas were meant to clean, serve, pour, vanish. Anything more was an offense. But tonight, something felt wrong. The walls carried a restless vibration, as if the pack itself sensed an approaching storm. Lulu kept her head bowed, yet every instinct in her body rose like hackles. 3 years in this place had trained her to recognize danger before it arrived. The fortress had its own rhythm, shouts, footsteps, growls, commands. But this was different. Urgent, sharp-edged. A heavy door slammed open behind her. She didn't look up. She didn't breathe. Remus. She knew the sound of his steps the way prisoners know the sound of a guard's keys. Deep, sure, unhurried, as if the world itself moved aside for him. He walked past her without slowing. He always did. She dared a glance at his boots. Dark leather, dusted from the evening patrol, then quickly dropped her gaze again. Remus never remembered her from that night, the night the raid burned her village and cut her childhood in half. But she remembered everything. The roar of his command, the crack of her father's last breath, the moment her mother's hand slipped from hers, and the eyes of the man who led it all. She swallowed the bitterness. It was poisoned water. Drink too much, and she would drown. A bucket of cold water spilled beside her hand as someone kicked it. "Move faster, Shadow," a guard barked, stepping around her. "The Alpha doesn't want to see filth on his floors." She murmured an apology and kept wiping, her fingers numb. 3 years of this. 3 years of being spoken to like an object, a smudge, a thing that lived only to prove it still breathed. Yet she survived. Quietly. Wisely. She saved her strength. She saved her anger. She saved the pieces of herself the pack tried to scrub away. Sometimes, when the nights were long and her body ached, she wondered if Remus remembered any face from that raid. The answer didn't matter. His memory or forgetfulness changed nothing about her reality. She was still here, still kneeling, still unseen. A passing Omega bent slightly and whispered fast. "Lulu, the warriors are restless. Something happened on patrol." Lulu's fingers paused. "What kind of something?" "I don't know. But they're tense. More than usual." Lulu nodded, though her pulse had already tightened. Trouble in the pack always spilled downward, and Omegas were the floor everyone stepped on. As the other Omega hurried off, Lulu straightened her bucket and kept cleaning, but her mind drifted to the night she was taken. She had been trained as a young warrior, small but fast, quiet but sharp. Someone worth shaping, her father said. Someone worth believing in. Now she was a girl on her knees, cleaning up after a man who destroyed everything she loved. But she wasn't broken, not fully, because she remembered. She remembered the smoke, the screams, the silver mark on Remus's armor, the moon slicing through the clouds as if watching her world end. He might have forgotten. Alpha wolves rarely remembered the ants beneath their boots. But ants could bite, and ants could survive. Lulu rinsed the cloth, wrung it out, and whispered to herself. 3 years is long enough to know when the wind is about to change. The fortress walls rumbled again. This time she knew the storm wasn't outside. It was coming from within. The courtyard always smelled of iron at night. Sweat, dust, old blood. Lulu could scrub until her fingers bled and the scent would still cling to the stones like a ghost refusing to leave. She worked quickly. The warriors had finished training late, and if the floor wasn't spotless by dawn, someone would make an example out of her. Omegas were reminders. Punish 1, silence 10. She wrung out the cloth, arms trembling, when a faint click echoed beneath the wooden decking at the far end of the yard. She froze. That space, those slatted boards, covered the old drainage tunnels. Dry, forgotten, supposedly sealed, but not silent. 2 voices murmured below. Low, urgent, not the lazy gossip of guards or the muttering of night shift Omegas. This was different, tight, planned. Lulu rose slowly, cloth dripping water onto her bare feet. She stepped closer, each move careful enough not to draw attention, quick enough to catch the words before they slipped away. "During the hunt feast," a man hissed. Another voice answered, deeper and unfamiliar. "He won't see it coming. The Alpha trusts him." Lulu's stomach knotted. Who? Who trusts who? A third voice joined in, chillingly calm. "When the signal fires go up, Remus dies first. The pack follows next." Lulu's blood stopped moving. "Remus." The cloth fell from her hand. She didn't care about the splash it made. Every sense sharpened until she could hear her own heartbeat fighting to escape her chest. She crouched, leaning closer, breath barely stirring the air. "Rogues will strike from the east and south," the calm voice continued. "He'll be surrounded before he shifts." "What if someone sees him fall too easily?" the deep voice asked. "He's strong," the first man replied, "but a dozen rogues on Frost Route, he doesn't stand a chance. By the time anyone questions it, it'll be too late." A shaky breath escaped Lulu's lips. Frost Root. She knew that word from her old life. Poison that weakened even the strongest wolves, slowing their regeneration, turning every wound fatal. They weren't planning a simple ambush. This was a coup, a slaughter. Her muscles locked. Her first instinct was to run, hide, shrink away into the darkness where she lived safely unseen. Warning an Alpha was suicide. Speaking out of place was suicide. Being found eavesdropping on treason was a death she wouldn't even get to scream through. But the voices kept talking. "Indrik said the body must burn," the deep one murmured. "No funeral rites. No tomb. Indrik, Remus's beta, his shadow, his brother in everything but blood." Lulu felt the world tilt under her feet. Indrik, the loyal one, the golden one, the one who spoke for Remus during council meetings and corrected warrior formations with calm authority. He wants him dead. The realization ripped through her like claws. Indrik wasn't just part of this. He was leading it. Her breath shuddered, and a hand slammed over her mouth before she made a sound. But she jerked away, heart pounding, realizing it was only her own hand, trembling uncontrollably. Below, the calm voice said, "When his body burns, the pack will see it as the end of a weak reign. They'll welcome Indrik as the new Alpha." The boards creaked as the conspirators shifted. They were moving, leaving. Lulu backed away fast, nearly tripping over her bucket. When she reached the courtyard entrance, she broke into a run. Her thoughts crashed into each other, fear, disbelief, survival, screaming louder than reason. Help him? Stay silent. Remus was no saint. He was the Alpha who destroyed her home, the reason she scrubbed floors instead of holding a blade. But she had watched him, quietly, secretly. He was hard, yes, but not cruel like other Alphas. Never careless with the lives of his people, never wasteful with punishment. If Indrik took over, the pack would drown in fear. Her lungs burned as she sprinted across the fortress grounds. A guard shouted, but she ignored him. She didn't stop. She didn't look back. The choice had already made itself. She would warn him, even if it killed her. By the time she reached the upper hall, her legs were shaking and cold sweat clung to her spine. Remus's chamber door loomed ahead, carved with the ancient wolf sigil, lit by 2 torches that flickered in the draught. Lulu pressed her hands to the wood, forcing the words through her breathlessness. "Alpha, please, you're in danger." Her voice cracked, and for the first time in 3 years, she stepped inside without permission. The chamber swallowed Lulu whole the moment she stepped inside. Warm firelight washed across dark stone walls, shelves lined with ancient tomes, weapons hung in perfect order. Everything here radiated Remus's presence, strength, discipline, authority. And now she stood trembling in the center of it. Remus turned from his desk, thick parchment still in his hand. His eyes, sharp, storm gray, narrowed the instant he saw her. "Who let you in?" His voice carried the effortless weight of command. "Omega's knock. Omega's wait." She tried, she really did, but her breath left her in a shaky burst. "Alpha, someone is plotting to kill you." Silence hit the room like a dropped blade. Remus straightened to his full height. "Speak carefully, girl." It wasn't anger in his tone. It was warning. Lulu forced the words out. "I heard them beneath the courtyard deck. 3 men. They said your name. They said the hunt feast. They—" "Enough." He raised a hand, jaw tightening. "You misunderstand things above your place." Her heart plummeted. Of course he didn't believe her. She was a slave in his eyes. A shadow, not someone whose warnings carried weight. He stepped closer, scent of pine and steel surrounding her. "If this is some attempt to gain favor, it's not." Her voice cracked, raw with urgency. "Please, Alpha, please listen." His eyes hardened. Lulu's breath hitched. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the object she had grabbed the moment she fled the courtyard. The one thing the conspirators had foolishly dropped through the slats. A small iron token, stained with fresh blood. Remus stopped moving. "This," she whispered, offering it in shaking hands, "is an oath seal." The firelight caught the engraved crest, 2 crossed fangs beneath a crescent moon. Remus's crest, only one other wolf had the right to bear it, his beta, his childhood friend, his almost brother, Indrik. Lulu saw the moment recognition rippled through Remus. His posture sharpened, shoulders tensing as he took the seal from her trembling palm. He turned it over once, twice, jaw grinding with each breath. "Where did you find this?" he asked, voice low, dangerous. "Below the decking. They dropped it when they were planning your death." Remus's silence this time was different, heavy, calculating. He looked at her as if truly seeing her for the first time. "Speak," he ordered softly. "All of it." So she did. Her hands twisted in front of her, voice shaking as she repeated every word she remembered. Rogues, frostroot, burning the body, Indrik crowned by fear. Remus's eyes darkened with each detail, but he never interrupted. When she finished, the room felt colder. He set the oath seal on his desk with deliberate care. "Why tell me this? You owe me nothing." The question split her open. She swallowed, fighting the sting in her throat. "I know what captivity feels like. I know what it means to lose the people who protect you. I have lived 3 years in a place that sees me as less than a person. I wouldn't wish that fate on any pack." Her voice softened, trembling like something wounded yet unbroken. "And you kept your people alive. Even when you were hard, even when you ignored me, you still carried the weight of them. I saw it. I watched you protect them." She looked away, ashamed of the confession bubbling up. "I won't let your pack fall into the hands of someone who would destroy it, not even after what you took from me." Remus inhaled sharply. "What I took?" Her breath froze. She hadn't meant to say that aloud, but the truth was already in the room, stretching between them like exposed bone. He stared at her, searching her face. "Do I know you?" "No." The word came out softly, bitterly. "You don't remember Omegas. You don't remember the villages you raid." A shadow crossed his expression, something almost like regret, almost like realization, but it vanished quickly. He stepped back, pacing once. "So you expect me to believe Indrik is leading a coup based on overheard whispers and a dropped token?" Lulu lifted her chin. "No." "Alpha." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. "I expect you to believe your own heart. You've known Indrik all your life. If this seal is his, then you already know the truth." He stopped moving. She saw it then, the fracture. The moment denial met the edge of reality and split open. Remus turned toward her slowly, not as an alpha to a slave, as a man facing something he wished he didn't have to see. "If you're right," he said quietly, "I won't survive the hunt feast." Lulu clasped her hands to keep them from shaking. "That's why I came. That's why I'm begging you." She looked up, eyes wide, breath trembling with the weight of the impossible. "Alpha, please pretend you're dead." The fire crackled. The words hung between them, absurd and terrifying. Remus stared at her with a mixture of disbelief and something unexpectedly human, fear not for himself, but for the pack she claimed to protect. He exhaled slowly. If I entertain this, his voice was rough. How? Her answer was a whisper. I know a way. His pulse flickered in his throat, and for the first time since she entered the room, he didn't look past her. He looked at her. The moon had climbed high by the time Lulu slipped into the storage cellar behind the old kitchens. The door groaned softly, dust floating through the lantern light like drifting ash. 3 shadowy figures were already waiting inside, Omegas with tired eyes and work-worn hands. Her friends, the forgotten. Mina, barely 16, who spent her nights mending warrior uniforms that never fit her own thin frame. Jaro, older, bent from years of chopping firewood until his spine remembered only pain. Suri, silent as snowfall, who had once been a healer before the pack stripped her rank and her name. They turned toward Lulu, fear sharpening their faces. You're late, Mina whispered. We thought something happened. Something did, Lulu murmured. Everything. She closed the door and lowered her voice. The Alpha is going to die tonight unless we help him. The air tightened. A small gasp escaped Mina. Jaro straightened painfully. Suri didn't move, but her eyes burned. Lulu, Jaro began quietly. He's never helped us. Why should we risk our lives for him? Lulu met their stares one by one, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. Because Indrik will not stop at him. If he takes the throne, Omegas die first. He'll call us traitors. He'll purge the ranks. No one will be spared. A heavy silence followed. Then Suri stepped forward, handing Lulu a small bundle wrapped in faded cloth. Inside lay frostroot, white, star-shaped petals that shimmered faintly under lantern light. You kept it all this time, Lulu breathed. Suri nodded once. For a day when strength needed a silent hand. Together, they set to work. They crushed the petals, extracted the milky sap, mixed it with stabilizing herbs, heated it until the liquid turned a translucent blue. The scent was sharp, cold as glacier wind, and it stung their eyes. Mina coughed. Are we sure he'll wake up again? Lulu didn't let her doubt show. If we give him the antidote in time, yes. And if we don't, Jaro asked, then he dies. No one questioned her again. When the mixture was ready, Lulu wrapped it in cloth and headed for Remus's chamber. Her friends followed at a distance, ready for whatever came next. Remus was waiting when she entered, still dressed in his patrol armor, expression grim but steady. The oath seal lay on his desk like a severed truth. You're certain this will work? He asked. No, Lulu said honestly. But it's the only way. He held her gaze for a long, searching moment. Then he nodded. Give it to me. Lulu stepped closer, uncorking the vial. Her hands didn't shake. Not because she wasn't afraid, but because there was no space left for fear. Remus took the vial between his fingers. Tell the pack I died fighting, he murmured. Not running. You're not dying, she whispered back. A faint, almost imperceptible smile tugged at his mouth. He drank. Within seconds, frostroot began its crawl through his bloodstream. His breathing slowed. His pulse thinned beneath his skin. Sweat glistened along his brow as the temperature of his body dropped. Stay awake, Lulu breathed. But his eyes were already losing focus. Moments later, he collapsed. The healers rushed in at the guard's call. They examined him, fingers pressed to his throat, ears to his chest. One of them whispered the words that would ripple across the entire pack. The Alpha is dead. Gasps, cries, disbelief. The fortress erupted into a trembling storm. Warriors dropped to their knees. Elders wept. Even the torches seemed to flicker with grief. And then Indrik arrived, his face twisted into a mask of sorrow so perfectly crafted it almost fooled Lulu. Almost. But she saw the spark of triumph buried too deep for others to notice. Prepare the pyre, Indrik ordered. He must be burned before dawn to purify his spirit. The council stiffened. Elder Rovan stepped forward, voice firm despite mourning. No, the Alpha must be buried in the ancestral tomb. Tradition demands it. Indrik's jaw clenched. There is danger in delaying his passing. There is greater danger, Rovan countered, in breaking sacred rites. For a moment, Indric's mask cracked, but he relented with a stiff nod, though rage simmered beneath it. The pack carried Remus's body to the ancient burial grounds. Lulu walked behind them, head bowed, hands trembling at her sides. If she had miscalculated even a fraction, dose, timing, any detail, Remus would never open his eyes again. Inside the tomb, carved from stone older than the pack itself, Remus was laid into the sarcophagus. Torches burned low, shadows clung to every corner, the elders whispered blessings, Indric whispered victory. The stone lid slid shut, the tomb sealed with a heavy, echoing finality. The pack left. Indric lingered, long enough for Lulu to feel his gaze like a blade against her spine. Then even he walked away, and the world believed its Alpha was gone forever. The night swallowed the burial grounds whole, leaving only the torch stubs flickering along the path, and the tomb's shadow stretching across the earth like a sleeping beast. The pack had dispersed in tight, murmuring knots. Indric had finally left with a satisfied stride. Certain victory waited for him at dawn. Only when silence settled, deep, heavy, absolute, did Lulu move. She signaled with 2 fingers. From behind the trees, Mina, Jarro, and Suri emerged, cloaked in darkness. Fear sharpened their steps, but loyalty carried them forward. Lulu held her breath as she crouched behind the tomb's rear wall. Her fingers found the old inscription carved into the stone, half warning, half plea, a reminder of a lineage now lying cold inside. Suri knelt beside her and brushed away leaves and soil until the corner of a rusted metal grate revealed itself, ancient, forgotten by everyone except the Omegas who cleaned the unreachable places of the fortress. "Lift on my mark," Lulu whispered. Together, they pried the grate open. It groaned like a creature waking from a centuries-old sleep. Cold air rose from the shaft, smelling of earth and secrets. One by one, they slipped inside. The tunnel was narrow and damp, forcing them to move hunched. Water dripped from cracks overhead, each drop echoing like a ticking clock. Lulu's breaths came short and fast, not from the crawl, but from the weight of what waited ahead. If she'd miscalculated the frost route, if Remus's heart didn't restart, if Indric doubled back, they would all die. Finally, the tunnel widened into a hidden chamber carved behind the main tomb. A stone panel separated them from the sarcophagus. Suri produced the small vial of antidote, golden liquid glowing faintly in the lantern light. "Ready?" Mina whispered. Lulu nodded, though her hands trembled. "Push!" Jarro and Mina pressed against the stone panel. It shifted a hair, resisting, then slid open just enough for Lulu to squeeze through. The sight nearly broke her. Remus lay motionless inside the sarcophagus, skin pale, lips barely tinted with color. Frost root still clung to him like an icy shroud. He looked gone. "Alpha," she whispered, voice cracking. She climbed into the tomb space, knees hitting the cold floor as she pulled his head gently into her lap. Her fingers brushed his cheek. Cold, far too cold. "Please don't be dead," she breathed. Mina handed her the antidote with shaking hands. Lulu uncorked it and tipped Remus's chin, letting the liquid drip past his lips. His throat did not move. He did not swallow. A tremor ran through her. "No, no, no." She pressed 2 fingers to his neck, searching desperately for any sign, any flicker of life. Nothing. Her vision blurred for a moment. "Remus," she whispered, tears burning, "you don't get to leave now. Not after this. Not after I chose to help you." She placed her palm over his heart and pushed. "Breathe." She pushed again. "Breathe." Again. "Please." His chest twitched. Lulu froze. Then, slowly, weakly, a new breath shuddered through him. His heart fluttered beneath her palm, faint, irregular, but alive. Again, Suri urged softly from behind the stone panel. "He needs more." Lulu guided the last drops of antidote into his mouth. This time, his throat tightened and swallowed. Color returned in thin waves, first to his lips, then his cheeks. His fingers twitched, his eyelids fluttered, and then he drew a deeper breath. Remus's eyes opened. Not fully, just a crack at first, but enough for Lulu to see the storm-grey flicker back into existence. He looked up at her, dazed, unfocused, but aware. Alive. Lulu released a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Relief hit her so hard her shoulders sagged. Her hand, still resting over his heart, felt the new strength building there. "Lulu?" His voice was rough, gravel scraping stone. Her throat tightened, a shaky laugh escaping her. "Yes, we're here. You're safe." He blinked slowly, his gaze steadying on her face. For a moment, neither of them moved. No walls, no ranks, no chains, just breath and heartbeat and the impossible intimacy of a man reborn beneath her hands. His next words were barely above a whisper. "You brought me back." Lulu swallowed, unable to look away. "I told you I would." Remus's stare deepened. Not demanding, not cold, but something raw. Something that acknowledged her fully, as if the last 3 years of ignoring her had just shattered. He reached up, fingers brushing her wrist. Weak, trembling, but intentional. "I owe my life to the Omegas I failed to protect." Lulu's breath caught. Behind her, Suri, Mina, and Jaro stepped forward. For the first time, Remus looked at them as people, not shadows. He exhaled shakily. "Then the future of this pack," he said, voice hoarse but resolute, "rests in the hands of those it forgot." Lulu tightened her grip on him to support his weight. "Then we'd better begin planning," she whispered. And in the cold hush of the tomb, still surrounded by death, something living sparked between them. Quiet but undeniable. Like the first ember before a wildfire. By dawn, the fortress no longer sounded like a home. It growled. Roars split the morning air, sharp, guttural, violent. Lulu, crouched near the tomb's narrow air vent, pressed her ear to the stone, listening to every echo that bled through. Above them, the world had shifted. Indrik wasn't waiting. He was claiming. Remus, still weak but conscious, levered himself upright against the tomb wall. Each movement was slow, but his eyes, sharpening by the hour, were fixed on Lulu. "Tell me," he rasped, "everything you hear." Lulu closed her eyes, letting the sounds guide her words. It began with a horn blast that sent birds scattering from the trees. Then Indrik's voice boomed through the courtyard, amplified by power, arrogance, and the thrill of victory. "Wolves of the Iron Moon Pack, your Alpha has fallen. His mantle passes to me by divine right." A chorus of confused cries followed. The pack wasn't ready. The pack wasn't asked. Remus's jaw tightened. He didn't even attempt the trial. Lulu's stomach twisted. "He refused it," she continued, voice low. The elders, those who had served Remus's father and grandfather, stepped forward first to challenge Indrik's claim. They demanded the sacred Alpha trials. They demanded proof. They demanded the moon goddess's blessing. Indrik gave them an answer. He summoned rogues. Lulu's voice faltered as she remembered the screams, the frantic shouts, the cracking of bones. "He brought them into the courtyard," she whispered. "Rogues with frost root on their claws. They tore through the elders before the pack could react." Remus's breath hitched. Lulu pressed on because he needed the truth, even if it carved him from the inside out. The eldest counselor. Roven. He tried to speak for tradition. Indrik cut him down, in front of everyone. Remus's fists clenched until his knuckles whitened. The effort sent pain shooting through his still recovering body, but he didn't release the tension. Lulu swallowed. He claimed the moon goddess had chosen him. He said your death was a sign of weak blood. Anyone who objects is marked a traitor. "Traitor," Remus repeated, the word burning inside his chest. Above, another cry rang out. This one choked and short-lived. Then the thud of a body hitting stone. Mina flinched. "He's purging the elders." Suri's eyes glistened. "He's cleansing everyone who stands between him and the throne." Jaro muttered a curse under his breath, voice shaking. "The pack is afraid to breathe." Lulu placed a hand on the cold stone wall, grounding herself. Her voice carried a quiet, trembling fury. Indrik isn't leading a pack, he's building a kingdom of fear. A shudder went through Remus. Not from weakness, but from a truth he could no longer deny. Lulu turned toward him. His expression was carved from shadow, tight with realization and regret. "Say it," she whispered. "I failed them." The words came out like a wound ripped open. He lowered his head, breath shuddering. "I trained Indrik. I trusted him. I let him stand at my right hand, and while I was blind, while I walked past you and every Omega who suffered, he was carving a path to this moment." Lulu hesitated, then moved closer. "This isn't your fault." "Yes," he said, voice raw. "It is." He looked at her with a brutal honesty that softened something inside her chest. "I ignored the fractures. I ignored the whispers. I ignored you." His voice dropped. "I didn't see the people who needed me most." Lulu's throat tightened. She had expected arrogance, denial, a wounded alpha clinging to pride. She had not expected this. Not remorse, not clarity, not the admission of an alpha who saw, perhaps for the first time, the lives beneath his command. Above them, Indrik's voice rose again, triumphant and cold. "Bring me the Omega lists, anyone who served Remus directly. Find them." Lulu stiffened. He was hunting them now. Remus saw the fear flash in her eyes. His own posture changed instantly, instinctively, protective. "He will not touch you," he said, voice steady despite his weakened state. "He will not touch any of you." Lulu stared at him, searching for the arrogance she once despised. It wasn't there. Instead, she saw a man facing the ruins of his pack and feeling every broken piece. "Remus," she whispered, "the pack is slipping into darkness." He inhaled slowly, deeply. "Then we rise before it swallows them whole." For the first time since waking, a spark of the alpha she once feared flared behind his eyes. Not dominance, not cruelty, but purpose. A storm gathering not to destroy, but to reclaim. And in the suffocating darkness of the tomb, surrounded by grief and danger, something unspoken passed between them. The old Remus had died. The one rising would not make the same mistakes. Not with Lulu beside him. For 2 days, the tomb became a heartbeat hidden under stone. Quiet, steady, alive. Indrik ruled the surface with fear, but beneath it, something else stirred in the dark. Something Indrik could not smell, see, or imagine. Lulu's network. Remus discovered it by accident. He had been resting against the wall, strength returning in careful increments, when a small knock tapped twice against the stone. Soft, coded, unmistakably intentional. Lulu answered with 2 taps of her own. The stone panel shifted, and Mina slipped in carrying a cloth bundle of food. "We got the leftovers from the warriors' hall," she whispered. Jaro distracted the kitchen guards by knocking over a whole cauldron of soup. Jaro, entering behind her, muttered, "It was an accident." Mina smirked. "Convenient accident." Remus stared, stunned. These were Omegas, untrained, unarmed, overlooked. Yet they were smuggling supplies past armed wolves, staging distractions, and coordinating movements with precision. Lulu took the bundle and began dividing it among them. "Did Suri get the message to the Northern Patrol?" she asked. Mina nodded. "Yes." She placed the warning under the barracks water barrel. Lulu's eyes brightened with approval. "Good. If even one warrior hesitates to obey Indrik's orders, it weakens him." Remus watched her, not just listened. Watched. The way she stood straight despite exhaustion. The way her voice softened when she encouraged Mina and toughened when she planned their next move. The way she thought ahead, weaving possibilities like threads on a loom. This was not the girl he had passed without seeing for 3 years. This was a strategist. This was a leader. When the others slipped out the secret shaft again, Lulu turned to find Remus staring at her. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "How long?" he murmured. "Have you been building this?" She hesitated, then lowered herself to sit beside him. 3 years. almost from the moment I arrived. You built a spy network, he said slowly, right under Indrik's nose. Under my nose. It wasn't a network at first. She toyed with the edge of her sleeve. It was survival, a way for Omegas to pass warnings, share scraps, watch each other's backs. But it became more. Lulu nodded. The pack ignores Omegas. That makes us invisible, and the invisible hear everything. She closed her eyes briefly, remembering all the nights she had cleaned the upper hallways while warriors whispered behind cracked doors. All the secrets tossed aside like crumbs, assuming the girl sweeping the floor couldn't understand them. Remus leaned forward, elbows on his knees, expression darkening, not with judgment, but realization. I failed to see it, he said quietly. All this time I thought Omegas were simply enduring, surviving. I never imagined you were organizing. Because we weren't supposed to, Lulu replied. Omegas were meant to be shadows, but even shadows know how to move. A moment of silence stretched between them, a silence thick with shifting understanding. You're different, Remus said softly. Lulu stiffened. Different? Not like the stories they tell about you. Not like what I let myself assume. His gaze held hers. You're calculating, brave, sharp. You built something powerful in a place that tried to crush you. Her breath caught, not because of the words, but because of how he said them, not with surprise, not with pity, with respect, a word she had never tasted from an alpha. She looked away quickly. I didn't do it alone. No, he agreed, but they follow your lead. They trust your judgment more than they ever trusted mine. Lulu frowned. That's not true. It is, Remus insisted gently. They moved the moment you asked, risked their lives, smuggled supplies, hid messages. His voice dropped. They would die for you. She shook her head. They would die for each other. Because you taught them how. Lulu went still. Remus's eyes softened, a quiet revelation unfolding behind them. When I get my throne back, he said, I don't just want you beside me. Her pulse stumbled. I need you beside me. Lulu's throat tightened. Remus, don't say things you don't understand. I understand more than you think, he murmured. The pack survived these 2 days not because of me, but because of you. A flicker of something unsteady passed between them, too fragile to name, too dangerous to acknowledge aloud. Lulu rose abruptly, brushing off her hands. We should focus. Indrik won't rest. Neither can we. Remus watched her with a faint, quiet smile, not mocking, not possessive, but something deeper. The Omegas chose you long before they chose me. Lulu froze mid-step. And now, Remus added softly, I see why. She didn't turn around. She didn't trust herself to. But for the first time since her world had shattered 3 years ago, warmth, not fear, bloomed in her chest. The alliance she'd built in the shadows had found new purpose, and Remus, the alpha who once crushed her life, now saw her as the light powerful enough to rebuild his. Nights in the tomb were long, too long. Darkness pressed close, thinning the boundary between silence and confession. Danger had a way of stripping people bare, peeling off armor until only truth remained. For Remus and Lulu, truth came quietly at first. A glance held a beat too long. A question voiced softer than expected. A breath shared in tight spaces where secrets could not hide. And with each hour spent beneath stone, something shifted. Remus fell first, not loudly, not dramatically, just gradually, like flame creeping across dry leaves. The moment it happened was so small Lulu almost missed it. Almost. It was the 4th night after his death. Remus struggled to sit upright, exhaustion dragging at his limbs. Lulu moved to steady him, her hand brushing his waist. He inhaled sharply. Not from pain, but from the jolt that tore through him at her touch. He masked it instantly, but she felt the tension. Sorry, she murmured, withdrawing her hand. You don't have to be. His voice came low, rough in a way that wasn't entirely about injury. Lulu busied herself with the lantern before her heartbeat betrayed her. Remus watched her far too closely. He was falling, and Lulu could feel it like the warmth of a fire she dared not sit beside. Later that night, they sat across from each other, sharing the stale bread Mina had stolen from the warrior hall. Remus broke his piece in half and held it out to her. Lulu stared. "You need it more," she said. "You gave me my life," he replied. "Let me give you half a loaf." It wasn't the words that stunned her. It was the softness beneath them. A softness she had never heard from him before Frostroot forced him to see the world from the floor instead of the throne. Lulu took the bread. Their fingers brushed. Neither pulled away fast enough. As the lantern dimmed, she found Remus studying her again, not with dominance, not with entitlement, but with a quiet hunger for understanding. "Lulu," he said, "what happened to your village?" She stiffened. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I was the Alpha who failed to remember the lives behind the raids. Because I owe you more than silence." She looked down at her hands, at the scars that never healed right. Her voice came steady, but each word carried weight. "I was supposed to become a warrior. My father trained me every dawn. My mother believed I would lead one day." She breathed in slowly. "And then your patrol came." Remus's chest tightened. "I didn't lead that raid," he whispered, though he knew how weak the defense sounded. "Your banner did," she countered. "Your wolves did." He flinched. Lulu did not apologize. "They took my parents, my future, everything that made me more than a shadow." She folded her arms, the habitual armor returning. "So don't look at me kindly out of guilt or pity. I can't bear either." Remus shifted closer. Not too close, just within the reach of honesty. "I don't pity you," he said softly. "I admire you." She blinked, unprepared. "You survived what should have broken you. You built a network out of people the pack pretended didn't exist. You warned the Alpha who took your life apart because you didn't want others to suffer." His voice deepened with something raw, scorching. "There is nothing pitiable about you." Lulu looked away, pulse stumbling. "You barely know me," she whispered. "I want to," he answered. Something fluttered in her chest. Dangerous, unwelcome, alive. "Don't want me because you feel guilty," she said, forcing strength into her tone. "Don't choose me because you regret the past." "I don't." His voice held no hesitation. "When I look at you, Lulu, I'm not seeing a past mistake. I'm seeing someone I can't stop thinking about." Her breath caught. Remus's expression softened, vulnerability slipping through the cracks in his Alpha facade. "I promise you," he murmured, "I will never desire you out of pity." The tomb felt smaller then, warmer, charged. Lulu swallowed hard. "Remus, this is not the time for feelings." "No," he agreed. "But danger doesn't wait for hearts to catch up." Silence settled. Deep, fragile, intimate. She looked at him, seeing not the Alpha who took everything from her, but the man fighting to rebuild what he broke. He looked at her, seeing not a slave, not a shadow, but the fire that had kept him alive. Something was blooming between them, slow, cautious, impossible to uproot. A quiet storm, a bond forged in darkness. A heart learning to trust another heartbeat, even when the world above them was falling apart. Hope was a fragile thing, thin as breath, sharp as glass. But in the hidden chamber beneath the tomb, hope slowly began to take shape. At first, a whisper, then a murmur, then a plan, and the plan was Lulu's. Remus learned that quickly. He sat cross-legged on the cold stone floor, maps and stolen parchments spread before him. Lulu hovered above the scattered pieces, like a commander assembling a war table. Mina placed a lantern near them. Jaro brought charcoal stolen from the kitchens. Suri arranged herbs at the ready, in case Remus's strength faltered. But all eyes were on the girl tracing lines across the map with the precision of someone who had been born for this. "We don't strike Indrik head-on," Lulu said, voice sharp with purpose. He surrounded himself with rogue wolves. Frostroot enhanced, wild, unpredictable. We weaken them first. Remus leaned closer. How? We cut their advantage. Lulu marked 3 circles on the map, points where the rogues slept, trained, and ate. Suri has a mild poison, not lethal, that will weaken their strength for hours if we slip it into the meat storage barrels. They'll be slow, Suri finished quietly. Easier to subdue. Remus watched the exchange, astonished. You know this territory better than half my scouts, he murmured. Lulu's jaw set. I cleaned every hallway. I emptied every waste bin. I learned the fortress because my life depended on it. Her gaze flicked to his, steady, unshaken. Remus held it for a moment longer than necessary. Then Mina pointed to the barracks drawn on the map. Some warriors hate Indrik already. They don't say it out loud, but we hear them. They don't trust the rogues. Lulu nodded. We gather them secretly. Leave coded messages in the laundry room under the training benches. Short phrases they'll recognize. Remus raised a brow. And how do we know they'll come? Lulu replied without hesitation. Because they fear Indrik more than they fear rebellion. He exhaled slowly. She was right. She often was. Jaro cracked his knuckles. What about Indrik's supply lines? He's taking food and medicine for the rogues. Everyone else is starving. Lulu drew a slash through the map. We sabotage them. Remus's eyes brightened with intrigue. Explain. She pointed to the eastern entryway. The rogues' supplies come through the old tunnel near the cliffside. Only Indrik's chosen guards monitor it. If we collapse the tunnel mouth while the next shipment arrives, the rogues will panic. Indrik will be forced to split his forces. Remus stared at her for a long, quiet moment, seeing her not as an Omega, not as a slave, but as a warrior of the mind. This is brilliant, he said softly. Lulu bristled, unused to praise. It's necessary. No, he insisted gently. It's brilliant. Color rose at the edge of her cheeks. She turned away quickly. We also need communication with the outside patrols, she added. Some still believe you're alive. We can use that. Remus's breath caught. You mean to tell them the truth? Yes. Her expression hardened. The pack is crumbling. They need a reason to hope. He studied her. Her confidence, her clarity, the fierce steadiness in her voice, and something in him ached. She was everything he hadn't known he needed beside him, and everything he feared losing. Lulu, he said softly, you're leading this rebellion. She stiffened. No, I'm only doing what must be done. You're doing more than that, he replied. You're organizing, inspiring, uniting shadows into soldiers. Her voice dipped, barely audible. Someone had to. And it should have been me, he said, regret thick in his tone. But instead, he lowered his head. Instead, I forced you into the shadows that are now saving my pack. Lulu didn't answer. Her heart tightened, but she held her silence. War left little room for emotion. Still, she felt the warmth of his remorse. She felt the sincerity in his voice, and it shook something loose inside her. She cleared her throat. There's one more thing. Remus looked up. We need to get the patrol captains on our side. They respect you. If they hear your voice, even once they'll doubt Indrik. He frowned. I'm too weak to shift, too weak to fight. You don't need to fight, she said. You just need to speak. Mina perked up. We can lure one of the captains near the tomb vent. Let him hear Remus, then he'll carry the message. Remus blinked, surprised. You planned even that? Lulu crossed her arms. I told you, I've been planning for 3 years. A slow smile touched his lips. Rare, real, painfully gentle. And for a second, Lulu felt her chest warm in a way she didn't allow. Not now, not here, not while the pack teetered on the edge of ruin. But when Remus spoke again, her resolve trembled. You're extraordinary, Lulu. Her throat tightened. Don't say things like that. Why? He asked softly. Because we're in a tomb, she whispered. And people don't fall for each other in places built for ending. He held her gaze, voice dropping to something deep and steady. "Then let this tomb be where something begins." Her breath stuttered. Before she could answer, distant shouts echoed from above, warriors arguing, rogues snarling, the crack of a whip. The tension fractured. Duty rushed back into her bones. Lulu stood, determined once more. "We attack Indric's empire, piece by piece." Remus rose with difficulty but full resolve. "Lead the way." The rebellion began that night, not with weapons or roars, but with a girl who refused to be a shadow. And an alpha who finally saw the light she had always carried. Indric's reign began with violence, but it was paranoia that truly hollowed the pack. By the fourth day, wolves whispered only behind closed doors, glancing over their shoulders as though shadows had grown heirs. One wrong look, one misplaced breath, one sign of hesitation, and Indric's rogue guards dragged someone away. The fortress corridors echoed with screams that ended too suddenly. Fear used to simmer under the surface. Now it boiled. Lulu pressed her ear to the tomb's narrow vent shaft, the cold stone biting into her cheek. Above, she heard Indric pacing, barking orders sharp enough to cut through stone. "Find the traitors. No one leaves the fortress without my mark. If anyone questions my authority, silence them permanently." His voice trembled with unhinged rage. He was cracking. Remus stood a few feet behind her, leaning against the wall for support. His recovery was slow but steady, and strength had begun to slide back into his voice. "What happened?" he asked quietly. Lulu swallowed. "One of our spies was nearly caught." Remus stiffened. "Who?" "Mina." Emotion flashed in his eyes. Real, furious, protective. "Is she safe?" "For now." Lulu exhaled. She was passing a message to the Northern Patrol captain. A rogue sniffed her out. Jarrow had to knock over an entire stack of weapons to distract them. Remus muttered something that sounded like a prayer and a curse combined. Lulu continued, voice tightening. "Indric knows information is slipping. He doesn't know from where, but he's hunting for cracks." Remus's jaw locked. "He underestimates how many wolves hate him." "He won't for long," Lulu warned. "If another spy's caught, this rebellion dies before it begins." Silence settled between them, a silence edged with fear, urgency, and something deeper neither of them wanted to name. Later, when Mina and Jarrow left through the shaft again, Lulu sank against the wall, exhaustion seeping through her bones. The lantern cast a soft glow across her face, highlighting the tension in her brow. Remus watched her carefully. "You haven't slept," he murmured. "Neither have you," she countered. "I died," he said dryly. "I'm allowed some weakness." Despite herself, Lulu huffed a quiet breath, almost a laugh. Almost. Remus moved closer, slow and deliberate, until he sat beside her. Their shoulders brushed. Lulu tensed, but didn't pull away. "You're carrying too much alone," he said. "I'm carrying what I must." "Then let me carry some of it with you." She shut her eyes, as though the offer hurt more than it healed. "You don't understand," she whispered. "If this goes wrong, the pack will fall apart. My friends will die. You will die." "I won't die," he said gently. "You already did," she snapped, voice cracking. For minutes I thought you—" She cut herself off, breath trembling. She didn't want to say it. She didn't want to reveal how her hands wouldn't stop shaking as she forced the antidote down his throat. How she had begged for his heartbeat to return like a madwoman. Remus turned to her fully. "Lulu." She shook her head. "No, don't look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you matter to me." The words slipped out. She froze. Remus inhaled slowly, deeply, as if her confession, half accidental, half ripped from her, was something he'd been waiting for. "You care," he said softly. "I care about the pack," she corrected, eyes darting away. "Lulu." "Don't," she warned. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull back. She didn't. His hand settled lightly over hers, warm and solid, a grounding point in the chaos. "You're afraid of losing me," he murmured. "Admit it." A breath escaped her, shallow, shaky. I can't lose you, she whispered, finally breaking. Not after everything. Not after... Her voice faded, fragile. Not after you took so much from me already. Remus's expression twisted, not with anger, but with grief. Grief for the pain he caused, for the girl he overlooked, for the ashes of her village still clinging to her soul. I can't undo the past, he said, voice thick. But I swear to you, Lulu, every breath I have left belongs to protecting you and the people I failed. Her fingers curled around his instinctively. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't surrender, but it was something real. A small bridge built between two wounded hearts. A heartbeat later, another scream echoed from far above. Lulu flinched. The world snapped back into danger. She pulled her hand away abruptly. We should prepare. Indrik is unraveling faster than expected. Remus nodded, but his eyes lingered on her with quiet fire. Lulu, he said before she turned away. When this ends, whatever happens to the throne, know this. She paused. You're not losing me, he whispered. Not now, not ever. Her pulse stumbled, but she forced herself to look forward, not back. Don't make promises in the dark, she said softly. They're too easy to believe. But he held her gaze until the moment nearly broke her, and when she finally moved away, her steps were steady. Her heart was not. Above them, Indrik's throne cracked another inch. Below them, a rebellion grew roots. Night settled over the fortress like a held breath. Silent, heavy, expectant. Clouds smothered the moon, turning the grounds pitch black. Perfect for what Lulu had planned. Perfect for resurrection. She stood near the hidden shaft, heart pounding as Mina slipped inside with the final message. It's done, Mina whispered. Every warrior who still has a soul knows where to stand. When Remus shows himself, they'll recognize the true Alpha. Lulu let out a shaky breath she'd been holding since dawn. Good. Go. Stay hidden until you hear the signal. Mina nodded, then vanished into the dark, like a spark returning to the night. Suri checked the salves strapped to her waist. Jarrow rolled his shoulders, jaw clenched. Lulu turned to Remus. He was stronger now, still healing, still scarred, but power thrummed beneath his skin like a storm ready to break. His gaze locked onto hers with a steadiness that tightened her chest. Lulu, he murmured, stepping closer. Before we move. No, she cut in gently. If you say anything now, I'll break. The truth sharpened between them, raw, unspoken, trembling. Remus exhaled slowly. Then let me just say this. I'm ready. She nodded once. Then we begin. They crawled through the shaft one by one, emerging behind the tomb's outer wall. The fortress courtyard stretched beyond them, silent, deserted, but charged with tension. Shadows trembled in the faint torchlight. Lulu scanned the grounds. 3 warriors knelt in the far left corner. Loyal ones. 2 more lingered near the armory door. A 6th patrolled alone, but paused when Mina whistled the coded sound. They were ready. She turned to Remus. Your pack is waiting, she whispered. He placed his palm against the tomb wall. The same stone that had sealed him in death, his voice, low and steady, filled the night. Open it. Jarrow and Mina pushed the hidden back panel they'd used for days. It slid with a grinding groan, stone parting like ancient breath. Remus stepped out, alive, tall and fierce despite the shadows clinging to him, purpose carved into every line of his body. For a moment, even the air paused, shivering in recognition. Lulu watched the loyal warriors see him. Their eyes widened, their breaths stuttered, their knees buckled. Alpha, one whispered, tears striking the earth. It's him. He's alive. Moon goddess, forgive us. We thought... Remus raised a hand. Stand, he commanded quietly. Your Alpha never left you. Hope surged through the courtyard like wildfire. The warriors rose, stunned and awed. Fear unraveled, reverence snapped into place. Then, a scream cut the night. He's alive! A young guard had spotted them. His torch clattered to the ground as he sprinted toward the fortress, shouting the truth that would split the pack in two. Remus didn't flinch. Lulu's heart hammered. "It begins," she whispered. Above them, the fortress roared awake. Shutters slammed open. Wolves poured from the barracks. Rogues snarled. Warriors shouted in disbelief. Then Indrik appeared. He stormed onto the balcony overlooking the courtyard, torchlight carving fury across his face. His eyes locked onto Remus, standing tall, breathing, alive. Indrik's expression collapsed into horrified disbelief. "No," he snarled, gripping the railing. "No, you're dead. You were dead." Remus didn't speak. He didn't need to. The moon slipped from behind the clouds then, casting silver light across Remus's form. The glow crowned him, illuminated him, affirmed him. Gasps spread like a shockwave. "Moon goddess," she blessed his return. Indrik lied. The true Alpha lives. Indrik's rage ignited. "Healers!" he roared. "Rogues, attack! Attack now!" No one moved. Not yet. They were staring at Remus, the Alpha who had risen from death. The Alpha whose heartbeat had been declared still. The Alpha Indrik swore the heavens had rejected. But here he stood, alive. And Indrik shook. Real shook. Not the theatrical fury he wielded before. This was fear. Real, gnawing fear. Because the moon goddess had not claimed Remus. She had returned him. Indrik staggered backward, voice breaking. "No, she chose me. She chose me." Remus took one step forward, slow and deliberate. "No," he said, voice deep as storm thunder. "She didn't." A shiver tore through the watching wolves. Indrik's face twisted into desperation, a cornered animal realizing the trap had been set long before he stepped into it. Lulu stepped beside Remus then, her presence calm, fierce, unmovable. Indrik saw her, and something like dread flickered in his eyes, as if he suddenly understood just how deeply he underestimated the shadows, just how thoroughly Lulu had beaten him on every front. Remus spoke again. Quiet, controlled, terrifying. "Tonight, Indrik," he said, "your throne breaks." Gasps spread like fire racing through dry grass. Lulu's hand tightened around the dagger hidden at her thigh. The rebellion didn't start here. It erupted. And Indrik, raging, trembling, defeated by the sight of the man he believed dead, finally felt the truth. The moon goddess had never stood with him. She stood with the Alpha, who clawed his way back to life, and the Omega, who lit the path. The courtyard erupted in a frenzy of motion, torches clattering, steel flashing, wolves shifting mid-stride. Every instinct Remus possessed surged to the surface, sharpened by betrayal and rebirth. But Indrik moved first. He leapt from the balcony, landing hard enough to crack stone. His eyes, once warm with brotherhood, now glowed with a venomous hatred that had simmered for years. "You were supposed to stay dead," he roared, stalking forward with a twisted smile. "Do you know how long I waited for the moon goddess to turn her face toward me? How long I served at your side while she glorified you?" Remus braced himself, voice steady. "You stood beside me as a brother. I never once saw envy." "That's because you never looked," Indrik snapped, fury spitting off every word. "You stole everything from me, the title, the reverence, the destiny that should have been mine." He pointed a shaking finger at Remus. "You were the moon's chosen, but you didn't deserve it. You were weak, soft. You cared for them." His gaze flicked to the warriors behind Remus. "And they loved you for it." His lips curled. "And I hate you for that, most of all." Behind Remus, wolves growled, fierce, united. Before Indrik, rogues snarled, claws dripping with frostroot residue. A heartbeat later, chaos detonated. Rogues charged first, their movements frenzied and unnatural. Warriors met them mid-rush, steel clashing against claws, roars filling the night. The courtyard became a storm of bodies and shadows, each strike illuminating the truth. This was not a pack battle. This was a cleansing. Lulu darted into motion before Remus could stop her. She moved with a warrior's instinct, silent, swift, precise. The dagger flashed in her hand as she slid under a rogue's swipe, slicing clean across his thigh. He stumbled. She pivoted and struck again, a sharp blow to his temple. He dropped like a felled tree. Another rogue lunged from behind her. "Lulu!" Remus called. She didn't need the warning. She twisted, caught the rogue's wrist, and drove her knee into his ribs. The crack echoed above the battle din. Remus exhaled, a mix of awe and fear. She wasn't just fighting. She was remembering her village's training, her father's lessons, the future she'd lost. She fought like she was reclaiming it. Indrik charged Remus with a snarl, shifting partially, bones cracking, claws elongating, eyes glowing. Not fully wolf, not fully man. A monster caught between forms. "You never deserved to lead," Indrik spat, swinging hard. Remus blocked the blow, though the force sent him stumbling a step. "If you envied me, you should have said it, not buried it until it poisoned you." "Why confess envy to a man who never listens?" Indrik roared. A man too blind to see the shadows at his feet. He lunged again, claws grazing Remus's cheek, drawing blood. It ignited something in Remus. He steadied, straightened. Shadows peeled away from him like brittle bark. "You want the truth?" Remus growled. "I trusted you more than anyone. I would have given you anything but the throne itself, and still you betrayed me." Indrik laughed, shrill and maniacal. "Exactly. You were blind then. You're blind now." But Remus wasn't. Not anymore. He met Indrik's next blow with a brutal counter-strike. 2 hits, clean and decisive, sending Indrik reeling. Rogues attempted to swarm him. But Lulu was there, dagger slicing, feet sweeping, shoulders rolling with the grace of someone who knew how to turn fear into power. Jaro and Mina fought beside her, pushing back against wolves twice their size. When a rogue pinned Mina against the wall, Lulu launched herself forward, slashing across his forearm and dragging him away with a strength that defied her size. Mina gasped, shaken. "I'm right here," Lulu said, eyes blazing. Remus saw everything, every strike, every sacrifice, every flicker of courage. His heart tightened painfully. Indrik saw it too, and it broke something unhinged inside him. "You fight beside an Omega!" Indrik screamed, voice cracking under disbelief. This is who you rise for." Remus didn't hesitate. "Yes." That single word shattered Indrik's composure. With a howl, Indrik lunged again, wild, reckless. Remus sidestepped, grabbed his shoulder, and drove him into the stone pillar with explosive force. The courtyard froze. Indrik slid down the pillar, dazed. His rogues watched, bloodied, weakening from the sabotage Lulu's team had carefully orchestrated. Remus grabbed Indrik by the collar, dragging him upright, their faces inches apart. "This ends now," Remus growled. Indrik struck out feebly, fury bubbling into desperation. "You don't deserve them. You don't deserve the goddess. You don't deserve—" Remus punched him, silence cutting the rest of the sentence. Rogues hesitated. Warriors stepped in. Lulu approached Remus, breath heavy, blade still ready. "It's over," she murmured. Remus didn't release Indrik until the warriors bound his hands with iron shackles. The rogues, drained and reeling, dropped to their knees one by one. The courtyard air shifted. The war was ending. The pack was turning, and Lulu, standing beside Remus, blood on her blade and fire in her eyes, felt the tremor of something enormous settling into place. Indrik spat blood at their feet. "You think this means you win?" Remus didn't answer him. He looked at Lulu. Their hearts were loud, close, unprotected, and every wolf watching knew. The rebellion had a leader in Remus. But the victory had been carved by Lulu's hand. Dawn bled slowly across the courtyard, warm light spilling over a battlefield still trembling from the night before. Bodies had been carried away. Blood had been washed from the stones. The rogues, those still breathing, were chained and disarmed. Warriors who'd once walked with their shoulders bent under fear now stood taller, chests rising with something they hadn't felt in days: relief, hope, a future. But for true peace to return, one final shadow had to fall. Indrik. He knelt in the center of the courtyard, bound with reinforced iron, head bowed. Not in remorse, never remorse, but because exhaustion and defeat weighed so heavily on him that his spine could no longer hold the arrogance upright. Remus stepped forward, each stride steady, powerful. The walk of an alpha, risen not by inheritance, but by trial. By death. By the people he'd nearly failed. Lulu watched from the side, arms crossed tight over her chest. Her friend stood beside her, Mina trembling, Jaro grim, Suri unreadable. Indrik lifted his head as Remus approached, lips curling into a bitter, broken smile. "So this is it," he rasped. "The great Remus returns. Not even death wanted you." A few warriors snarled. Remus raised a hand, silencing them instantly. His voice was quiet, but the courtyard held its breath. "You killed elders who built this pack. You murdered wolves who trusted you. You tried to burn me before I was cold. And you unleashed rogues on your own people." Indrik's smile widened, mad and sharp. "I did what had to be done. You were too weak to lead. And now," Remus said, "you are too dangerous to live." Shock rippled across a few younger wolves. But the elders, those who survived, nodded solemnly. Justice was not vengeance. It was restoration. "The sentence," Remus continued, "is death." Indrik's face cracked, anger, disbelief, fear flickering in rapid succession. "You wouldn't," he spat. "You owe me loyalty. We grew up together, trained together. You called me brother." "I did," Remus whispered. A shadow crossed his eyes. "And you used that bond to slaughter my people." Something broke in Indrik then, a final shatter of the delusions he had worn like armor. "No," he thrashed against the chains. "No, I am the Alpha. The moon chose me. She promised." But even the sky remained silent, and for the first time, Indrik seemed truly alone. Remus looked to the crowd. "Let this execution restore what fear stole from us." Two warriors stepped forward, iron spears in hand. Indrik's eyes darted wildly, but he had nowhere to run. Lulu didn't flinch. Remus didn't look away. The spears struck clean. Indrik's cry cut short, sharp, then gone. His body slumped, the fight leaving him forever. The rogues lowered their heads, the warriors lifted theirs, and the fortress exhaled. The veil of fear that Indrik had wrapped around the land lifted as though torn open by sunlight. The air felt different, lighter, like the first breath after almost drowning. One by one, wolves bowed their heads to Remus. A gesture not of force, not of fear, but of renewed faith. "The true Alpha has returned," someone whispered. "May he lead us into peace," another murmured. Cheers rose softly at first, then thundered across the courtyard. Warriors embraced, elders wept, wolves who once hid now stepped boldly into the morning light. Lulu watched it all from the edges. Her face remained still. Her heart, however, shook in her chest. This was freedom. This was victory. This was everything they had fought for. Yet she kept her emotions guarded, shadows wrapped tight around her ribs. This was his triumph, his pack, his throne reclaimed. Not hers. Not yet. Remus turned through the crowd searching, ignoring the praise, ignoring the hands that reached for him, until his eyes found her. Even in victory, he looked at her as if she were the axis the world spun around. Lulu quickly looked away. She wouldn't let herself feel too deeply. Not when the dust of war still clung to them, not when her heart remembered everything he had taken from her life. But as Remus crossed the courtyard toward her, something inside her whispered a truth she wasn't ready to face. Freedom had returned to the pack, but now something far more dangerous was waking inside her own chest. By midday, the courtyard had transformed from a battlefield into a gathering place. Wolves filled every ledge, stair, and walkway. Elders leaned on staffs, warriors stood shoulder to shoulder, children perched on rooftops to see better. The entire pack had come. They needed reassurance. They needed truth. They needed their Alpha. Remus stepped forward onto the stone platform overlooking them. His wounds were still raw, his body still recovering, but there was no weakness in his stance. Power thrummed around him, not loud or boastful, but steady and earned. The crowd quieted instantly. "My people," Remus began, voice carrying across the courtyard, "these past days have tested every one of you. You have endured fear, loss, betrayal." Eyes dropped. Some wolves wept silently. "But today," he continued, voice strengthening, "we stand in the light again, not because of me, but because of the ones you were taught not to see." A murmur swept through the crowd. Remus turned, lifting his arm toward the far right of the courtyard, where Lulu stood with Mina, Jarrow, Suri, and the rest of their secret network, scared, uncertain, and terribly out of place among the pack that had ignored them for years. "Come," he said softly. Lulu blinked. "What?" "No, I don't belong up." "Come," Remus repeated, and something in his tone made refusal impossible. Jarrow nudged her gently. Mina squeezed her hand. Suri gave a quiet nod. So, with stiff legs and a guarded heart, Lulu stepped onto the platform. The pack stared, some in awe, some in confusion, some in shame. Remus waited until she stood beside him, though she kept a careful distance. His gaze swept the crowd again. "These wolves," he said, his voice ringing with authority, "risked their lives to save yours." A ripple of shock burst through the gathering. "Omegas? They did? How?" Remus raised a hand, silencing the whispers. "They uncovered Indrik's plot. They kept me alive when my heart nearly stopped. They smuggled food, gathered intelligence, sabotaged rogues, and rallied warriors to stand against fear." Lulu's breath hitched. She hadn't expected this. Not publicly, not loudly, not before everyone. Remus's voice softened, still strong, still unmistakably alpha, but touched with something far more intimate. Lulu led them. Every head turned toward her. Every eye saw her. Not the slave sweeping floors, not the shadow in the corner, not the orphan of a forgotten raid. They saw the strategist, the fighter. The heartbeat of their salvation. Lulu's chest tightened painfully. She hated attention, hated eyes. But this felt different. Like the pack itself was finally willing to rewrite the story she'd been trapped in. Remus stepped closer, not touching her, but the distance between them felt like a held breath. "This Omega," he said, gaze steady on her, "has more courage, more wisdom, and more heart than half the alphas in our history." Gasps, nods. A few wolves bowed instinctively. Lulu tried to hide her trembling hands. "And today," Remus continued, taking a slow breath, "I correct my greatest wrong." Her head snapped toward him. "Lulu," he said, quiet now, just for her, though every wolf strained to hear. "You are free." She felt the words like a blade cutting through chains she no longer remembered the weight of. Free. The courtyard held its silence, heavy with the enormity of it. But Remus wasn't finished. He stepped 1 inch closer, and even that single inch sent a shiver through her. "I cannot undo what I took from you," he said, remorse flickering in his voice. "But if you will allow it, I would see you stand not behind me." His eyes held hers, unwavering, "but beside me." Confusion swept the crowd. Even Lulu frowned, breath caught halfway between disbelief and dread. "Remus," she whispered, "what are you—" He turned to the entire pack. "I offer Lulu the role of Beta," he declared, voice thundering. Shock exploded across the courtyard. "Beta? An Omega? She saved us. She deserves it." Lulu staggered back a step. "Remus, no, you can't." "I can," he said gently. "And I will." Her heart pounded. She felt exposed, overwhelmed, furious, honored, every emotion crashing into the next. "I told you," she whispered tightly. "I won't be your mate." Remus's expression softened into something warm enough to weaken her knees. "I know," he murmured. "This isn't a proposal." His next words were quiet, steady, and far more intimate than any declaration shouted from rooftops. "Having you beside me," he said, "is enough." Lulu's breath trembled. The pack waited, every wolf poised between past and future. She could say no, She could walk off the platform. She could remain a shadow forever. Instead, she laughed, softly, breathlessly, disbelievingly. "You're cunning, Remus." A collective gasp. Some wolves even smiled, perhaps the first real smiles the pack had shared in days. She shook her head, eyes warming despite everything she tried to hide. "I'll take the position," she said, "but don't expect me to make your life easy." Remus smiled, slow, relieved, and devastatingly genuine. "I wouldn't want easy," he whispered. The pack erupted, cheers rising like thunder, like gratitude, like rebirth. They chanted Remus's name, they chanted Lulu's, they chanted the Omegas, lifting them high with voices that once pretended they didn't exist. And Lulu. She stood beside Remus, not as a slave, not as a shadow, but as the Omega who saved a kingdom, and the woman the Alpha could not hide his heart from anymore. The cheers still echoed through the courtyard when the crowd finally began to disperse, wolves touching Lulu's shoulder as they passed, some shyly, some gratefully, some in quiet awe. Lulu did her best to keep her expression steady. She'd been invisible for so long that being seen, really seen, felt almost dangerous. Remus stepped toward her, the crowd thinning behind him until only the fading sunlight spilled between them. His hair was mussed from battle, his jaw scarred, his heartbeat steady. He looked nothing like the untouchable Alpha she once feared. He looked like a man who had been broken open and rebuilt out of truth. "You handled that better than I expected," he murmured, a hint of warmth playing at his mouth. Lulu scoffed. "You set me up." His brows lifted. "Set you up?" She jabbed a finger lightly into his chest. "Don't act innocent. You knew exactly what you were doing." "I honored you," he said, smiling. "You trapped me," she corrected, fighting a grin. A whole crowd watching. "You knew I couldn't say no without looking heartless." He chuckled softly. "Would you have said no if no one was watching?" "Yes," she said quickly, but her voice wavered. Just slightly. Remus's smile deepened. "You're terrible at lying when your heart is loud." She glared at him, heat climbing up her neck. "You're cunning, Remus." His smile turned into a quiet laugh, one that softened every hard line on his face. "I take that as a compliment." "It wasn't," she muttered. He stepped closer, close enough that she felt the warmth of him, close enough that she remembered the tomb, the darkness, the shared breaths, the truth neither of them dared touch. "Lulu," he said, voice low and steady. "I meant every word." Her heartbeat stumbled. "You are free," he continued. "You owe me nothing, not affection, not forgiveness, not a place at my side." "Then why offer me beta?" she whispered. "Because you earned it," he replied. "And because the pack needs your mind, your courage, your fire." He held her gaze. "And because I want you beside me, in whatever way you choose to be." She swallowed hard. The honesty in his voice tugged at something deep, something she had kept locked away for years. "Don't expect anything beyond loyalty," she warned, "and leadership. That's all I can give." Remus nodded once, accepting the terms without hesitation. "Lulu," he murmured, "just having you by my side is enough." Her breath caught. The courtyard felt suddenly quiet, as if even the wind paused to listen. She shook her head, trying to break the moment before it broke her. "We'll see how long you keep saying that," she said, but her voice softened. "I'm not easy to work with." "That's what makes you perfect," Remus replied. She froze. He didn't reach for her. He didn't lean closer. He simply let the words settle between them, gentle, patient, unhurried. Then, before she could retreat behind her walls again, he bowed his head slightly, a gesture of respect, of partnership, of promise. Lulu inhaled slowly. She had lost her family, her village, her freedom. But standing beside Remus now, with Mina and Jarro and Suri in the crowd, with the whole pack lifting its head toward a dawn they hadn't believed would come, she felt something new beginning to form. Not love, not yet, but possibility. Hope wrapped in slow-burning embers, a future rebuilt from ashes. She straightened her shoulders. All right, Alpha, let's start your new era. Our new era, he corrected gently. She didn't argue. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, a familiar sound rose from the wolves, howls rolling across the sky, echoing through the land. Not cries of fear, not mourning, not rage. A howl of rebirth, a howl that welcomed a warrior Omega turned Beta to the throne's right hand. A howl that honored an Alpha, humbled by death and changed by love. Lulu glanced at Remus. His eyes, storm gray, soft at the edges, met hers. And though neither moved, neither touched, the unspoken truth shimmered between them. This was not an ending. It was the first spark of a love patient enough to wait and strong enough to grow beside their shared throne. The end. Tell me what you think about this story. And if you enjoyed it, share your favorite moment. I always love hearing your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next story.